Now, as to some of the details as to how things are cut, I want to show you excerpts from 3 different Video Club selections. We are going to look just basically back to back to back from Video Club selection number 3, from number 7, and number 10, and these will cover how the pieces are held. They will cover overhand and underhand cutting and the cutting techniques used in cutting a cylindrical object, something that is where the wheel has to work and the cutter has to look through the cuts he's already made on the front side. So these I think you'll find very interesting. The first one is from Video Club selection number 3.
Last May, all of the members of the Cut Glass Association received this auction bill in the mail. When I saw it, I was amazed at the photography on the front cover. The detail of this front cover is so superb that it reminded me of a story that Floyd Manwaring shared with us many years ago. Floyd Manwaring worked for 52 years for Hawks and Tuthill and a number of other companies, and he worked his way up to becoming a supervisor or a foreman for the company. And I asked him one time, Sharon and I were visiting him in his little garage cutting shop, and I asked him how anyone ever got a day off in this business. And he was telling us about what was involved in actually cutting a piece of glass. And I recall him describing it as you holding a piece of wet clay in your left hand, and the blank is laying on this wet clay to absorb the shock. And as the wheel turns and you're looking through the blank, the wheel heats the piece of glass up to such a degree that you need to train your 4 fingers of your right hand and hold them near the wheel so you can feel for heat. And when you know the heat is getting too intense, you know to back off just a little because you'll lose the blank if you don't. But he said the one most important thing was that you not have a cold that affected your hearing. And that was the only excuse that Hawks would allow for anyone to miss a day's work, if they had a cold that affected their hearing. Now here's the reason. As the wheel goes through the glass, it makes a special sound, a special pitch. In fact, someone with perfect pitch would be able to tell you what note it was, but a foreman along the line could listen to all of the pitches of all of the wheels and knew everything was going fine until he heard one that was either a little shriller or a little duller or just a little different than it was supposed to be, and he knew that that wheel was about to come through the blank. If you could not hear the wheel's pitch exactly, then you were liable to ruin the blank, no matter how sensitive your fingers were to the heat. So this was one of the strange things about the cut glass world, that I don't think this has appeared in a book or anything. However, speaking of books, the next time you go to a nice bookstore, Waterford puts out a big thick book that is designed to lay on coffee tables. You know the kind of book I mean. And without investing in this thing, thumb through it at the bookstore and find the section in there where they show a photograph of how they do work. And they have a photograph in there of all their men lined up at the cutting bench, and they have a photograph of a Hobstar that they're kind of proud of. Now when you look at this Hobstar, the points don't come together. They cross one another and they continue to go another 1/8 of an inch, and they don't touch. The Hobstar has to be, well, it would have been totally rejected by any of the cut glass companies during the Brilliant period as being totally unsatisfactory, and yet this is the photograph that Waterford chose to show as an example of their fine work. Also, what's interesting along this line is if you look closely at the people at the cutting benches, every one of them is wearing the great big earmuffs that the baggage handlers wear at the airport out on the tarmac. In other words, they don't want them to have to listen to the screechy wheels cutting through that blank. So you see how things are just a little bit different and the way they do things. And I thought you would enjoy that little story, the little sidebar of information on the cut glass world. And before we leave this and before I show you some wonderful decanters that we have, I want the cameraman to focus in one more time on this photograph of this piece of glass, and you look at the precision of the work on this. Now this is a piece of golden glass that probably came from the de Cordova Museum, the Union Glass Company, and we have been fortunate to have some of this glass in the past, and it is extremely well done. But you can just see there isn't a mistake anywhere, and each of the Hobbs stars, each of the points is exactly perfect, and this was done by a true craftsman. And if the Waterford Company could have shown this, they would have been much better served.